Hi, I'm Grant Greenberg. Science and You starts now.
I'm Mike Gilliam. Oh, it's another hot one. And when it gets hot like this, a lot of people like to come out here and try to cool off just a little bit. And there's a movement out there to try to make sure that the waters are clean and clear for you, your kids, my kids, and their kids as well. I'm going to tell you all about that in just a minute on Science and You.
Instead of just sitting on the beach, many people are now using their vacation time to help clean up the earth. I'm Grant Greenberg, and that's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Magali Laguerre-Wilkinson. They're the largest known animals to have ever lived on this earth. Do you want to see what they look like? Join us for a trip back in time on Science and You.
I'm Carol Ann Riddell. You may have one of these in your kitchen, the humble spud, but did you know it can be a science teacher? That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Donna Hanover. What do space flight and mini golf have in common? Actually, more than you might think. Coming up on Science and You.
I'm Barry Mitchell at the Central Park Zoo. Today we're going to meet a scientist who chucked it all for a life in comedy. Dr. Tim Lee, coming up on Science and You.
I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You. Now, the dog days of summer are upon us. And when it gets hot, people in and around New York City like to cool off out on the water. One group is trying to make sure that the waters are clean for generations to come. The group is called Going Coastal, and they're preaching something called green boating.
It's beautiful in the water.
The people at Going Coastal are on a mission when it comes to the waters in and around New York City.
We are actually an educational group and environmental group. We create guides to the New York City's waterfront and other urban waterfronts. We want to let people know where to access the water, how to access it, and how to use it in the correct, appropriate way.
And that means disposing of sewage generated by recreational boaters into sewers, not directly into the waters. So they've secured grants and donations and launched this new pump-out boat that will work the waters of western Long Island Sound and Eastchester Bay, including Throgs Neck and City Island in the Bronx, where on hot summer days, people play in the sun and water.
We actually wanted to be a part of it, to do something to clean the environment. And we wanted to have a pump-out boat, so it took about 5 years to very extensive work to get the money together, to buy the boat. And then we were lucky enough to work with Kingsborough Community College, and they provided those incredible guys for us to work with, and we are in the water, we're doing it.
In the past, boaters had dumped raw sewage into the waters if they couldn't get to a pump-out facility or boat.
I'm just going to walk you, bring me right here, and I'm going to walk you in.
Now, the not-for-profit Going Coastal boat comes to marinas and boats that are anchored and relieves them of their waste free of charge.
I got a feeling, a lot of people would discharge because of the, of the amount of money they got to spend on fuel and the distance they got to travel. So this will cause a lot of people to use the boats now. We need this water clean. It makes so much difference, for the fish that people are fishing and eating, and for the swimming. You go out there a day like today when it's so hot, you want to go in the water. You don't want to see stuff in the water and not want to go in, You get to enjoy the water more when you see it clean.
How do they react when they see this little boat come up to a marina?
Well, they can't believe it, first of all. They're like, they look at us like we're angels. We fell out the sky because they said they weren't able to receive these services earlier. And so they're really happy to see us out here.
The organization also offers information on kayak trails around the city, guides on what fish from local waters are safe to eat and in what amounts, and fishing line recycling bins aimed at keeping the lines out of the water and off beaches where they can injure birds, fish, and pets.
Fishermen discharge their fishing line there, and then we send it off to a place that creates actually fish habitat. So instead of it being a nuisance, now all of a sudden it's a raw material to create fish habitat, to make more fish, to make the environment better.
What are you saying to boaters?
I'm saying to boaters, we're making as convenient as possible for you guys to keep our waters clean, to discharge your sewage in a correct and proper manner.
So the marine companies say they're doing their part by helping to keep the water clean. And the environmental groups say they're chipping in and helping to clean up the water. All anyone asks is that if you come out, you do your part as well. Don't litter. Save these waters for generations to come. I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You.
I'm Grant Greenberg for Science and You. When it comes time to use your vacation days, you probably think about a trip to the beach or maybe hitting the slopes. But now many people are using their free time to try to save the earth.
So we put it right along there, and that'll be something that they would be accustomed to running along. So hopefully they'll naturally go there, run right through it, get some food, and leave some tracks behind for us.
You're looking at the way 27-year-old Patrick McNamara, a middle school science teacher from New Jersey, and hundreds of other people are spending part of their summer breaks.
So we try to find like downed limbs. This one would be good.
They're trudging through the woods at Alley Pond Park in Queens, setting up traps, cameras, and food, trying to find out what wildlife is running through the wilderness in and around New York City.
Chipmunks, gray squirrels, raccoons, possibly possums, cats, and dogs.
This may not seem like vacation to you, but environmental organizations like Earthwatch say thousands of people from around the world sign up and volunteer to help with the research aimed at improving our planet. In many cases, people even pay for their own airfare to take part in experiments like this.
They really want to see firsthand nature, get a sense of biodiversity around the world, and feel like they're actually contributing to something as opposed to just spending their money and going to Europe and doing your typical, let's go see all these big cities in 10 days.
Kat Burns is a professor at the University of Maine and heading this project to examine how urbanization affects wildlife all around the city. Earthwatch funds her research and provides the volunteers.
So they basically have an amazing network around the world that connects researchers with citizen scientists. So people who are out there interested in having kind of an atypical vacation.
Atypical holidays, as Byrne puts it, are all the rage these days, with more and more people taking part in what are being called green vacations. These can range anywhere from eco-adventures like kayaking to staying in environmentally friendly hotels, or even spending a little extra to offset their carbon footprint, essentially purchasing activities calculated to remove as much CO2 from the air as you contribute through your travel. Some are educators like Mary Murdoch from Los Angeles, bringing their experience back to the kids.
One of the reasons I came here was to find more ways to increase the amount of environmental awareness and bring, some different ideas to the program.
Others like Crispin Zeman love the experience so much they end up working for Earthwatch. He does marketing for the company and flew in from England for this.
Even on your doorstep, you can go out into places you've never experienced before and do things you never thought you'd find yourself doing. And you don't need any previous skills. You don't need any training. You're all taught as you come through on the expedition. You're taught how to collect the data and so on, and you're given an insight into what this data means and how it is being used by the scientists.
Some trips land people in exotic locations like a South American rainforest or a South African safari. Others find themselves in a bit more mundane places.
So they get out there and they're wearing chest waders and they've got dip nets and they're going into the ponds. We've been in the ponds in Central Park. We've been in ponds in all sorts of weird places, on golf courses, near landfills, as well as in pristine ponds.
Doesn't sound like a vacation to me.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised at some of the variety of approaches that people take to vacationing.
Apparently, the Earthwatch approach is working. There's a 50% return rate. Results from this experiment in Queens could take years to calculate, but that's okay with Patrick McNamara. He didn't know where he'd end up when he signed up for this summer adventure and says he has no regrets about spending it at a public park surrounded by roads and the bright lights of the big city.
It's been beautiful, sunny, but when it's 100 degrees and you're hiking 6 miles, it's not the best atmosphere. I definitely recommend it for anybody that is looking for an experience they haven't had yet. And even if you have, like myself, it's just great to get back into it and do something different. It's a great thing.
I'm Grant Greenberg for Science and You.
Welcome to Hot Sands. I'm Thomas Stevens, and this is our glass studio. So let's blow some glass. First gather. So there's 2100 degrees of liquid glass. I'm going to bring the gather over to the color. I'm going to touch opposite sides into that color. The gather is actually sticky towards other pieces of glass, so it's just going to suck that up into the outside. Then I'm going to go back into the glory hole and I'll melt that color in. You'll see those little kernels sort of smooth out and become part of the clear glass. I want you to reach out and around, gently squeeze the glass in between two of those lines that I make while I turn the pipe away from you. Then I'll go back to the furnace. I'll get a second gather of glass to cover up everything we just made. Then I'm going to bring the pipe to you like this. You put the white mouthpiece in your mouth, get a good seal with your lips, and you start to blow. It's going to be like blowing into a bottle. Your breath isn't going to go anywhere, but you just want to keep up the pressure. What we're going to do now is transfer the glass, and it's very difficult to do it on your own. She's got a solid rod. She's put a little bit of glass at the tip. Just attach it to the end of your glass here. We're going to break it off the pipe, and it's going to stick on Aaron's. I'm just going to use a couple drops of water. I'm just going to shock this glass up near the pipe.
I'm Magali Laguerre-Wilkinson. We're here at the American Museum of Natural History for the world's largest dinosaurs exhibit. This show isn't about just fossils and bones, but rather it'll take you into a world revealing just how these dinosaurs, known as sauropods, once lived. This is one creature that has to be seen to be believed. Dinosaurs. These great, terrifying creatures were tailor-made for big-screen horror films. But these giant beasts roam the prehistoric world millions of years before any humans, including filmmakers, stood upright on the earth. And it's now clear that while we thought we knew something about them, we were way off.
We know that most of these animals were, carnivorous dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus rex, had feathers.
Mark Norell is a paleontologist and is the curator of the world's largest dinosaur exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History. He's been studying these creatures for over 20 years.
We know that these animals, at least the theropod dinosaurs, again, that some of them brooded their nests just like living birds do and sat on top of their eggs. With these kinds of animals, I think one of the neat things is that people have sort of figured out why their necks were so long, because it was always traditionally depicted that they were like giraffes, sort of plucking foliage from the tops of trees. But if you take the bones and you try to put them together like that, they don't fit together. They only fit together sticking straight out.
We're learning more and more about the daily life of these fascinating animals, right down to their diets. These were herbivores,
right?
Correct? So, vegetarian diet.
Yeah, well, it's one of the really unanswered questions about these things, is how that they could maintain the kind of rates of growth that they were able to maintain just eating a vegetarian diet. And it's still, even though that there's a lot of calculations which have been done and figuring out exactly how much these animals had to eat, it was an amazing amount.
Amazing is putting it mildly.
Yeah, that's an hour's food, and this is a day's food.
This is what in a single day.
In a single day.
What
they consumed.
And could you give us the dimensions?
Yeah, it's about 5.5 feet.
The exhibit also shows all the fascinating aspects of the animal. Another eye-opening factoid: how quickly they grew. So this is what we're seeing here?
Yeah, that's what you're seeing here. So if you compare that to a human, it takes 5 months for a human baby to double its weight. And then it takes another 2 years for it to be 4 times its weight. It's only 16 times its weight when it's about 16, 17 years old. And a sauropod can do that in 2 months.
Visitors can also experience the recreation of a gigantic sauropod, with one side showing its skeleton and the other its anatomy, all while actually feeling the vibration of the breathing creature.
We wanted to really show this as not just a model, but as a living organism. And the way it would look that if you were in biology class and that you had one of these things and you were doing a dissection of it, and you wanted to find out things about how it breathed, about its reproductive system, about its stomach, about where the food went, how its stomach differs from the human stomach, and all those sorts of things. So that it just gives, I think, that the museum visitor a chance to appreciate these things as living animals and not just as bones.
The sauropod on display is huge, larger than any living African elephant of today. Even so, the one here is half the size of what the largest dinosaur was. The museum simply didn't have a room large enough for a recreation that big.
What's notable about this one, though, is that this animal, which lived about 125 million years ago in China, is, or what's now China, it has the longest neck proportional to the body size of any of the sauropod dinosaurs.
Thanks to advances in science, an understanding of these extinct giants is also a major part of this exhibit. And while an excavation dig may not be in your travel plans, there is one offered right here at the museum, so visitors can actually see for themselves how dinosaurs are discovered out in the field. The world's largest dinosaurs is now open through January 2nd of next year at the American Museum of Natural History. I'm Magali Laguerre-Wilkinson for Science and You.
I'm Carol Ann Riddell. It started out with a dad, his son, and a fascination with potato chips. But what does that have to do with science? Take a look.
What is your favorite snack food, guys?
Chips.
What kind of chips?
Potato chips.
Well, let's see if we can come up with a little science experiment, one or two maybe, involving potato chips. Now, if I had a scientific bag of potato chips, that might be possible. Well, what do we have here?
Snacks and science, an unusual but tasty pairing cooked up by inventor Alan Kurzweil and his chip-loving son, Max. Their creation, potato chip science.
Just your ordinary bag of potato chips, or so it seems, until you dump everything out.
The kit includes supplies and a 96-page book of experiments designed to get kids snacking on science and leave them hungry for more.
The entire package, right down to the bag, is repurposed, reused in the experiments. And my hope is that kids will start looking at the packaging that they usually throw in the garbage can differently, not as garbage or trash, but as an opportunity. I want them to realize that science is lurking everywhere, in the recycling bin, in a bag of potato chips. I think it's important that they start seeing that they can create really cool stuff with the simplest of objects found all around the house.
What kind of cool stuff? Potato chip tubes become bird feeders.
You put the bird feed inside here.
Walkie-talkies, and a confetti cannon. So what do you guys think of potato chip science?
Chip-tacular!
Moving to physics, a lesson on potential and kinetic energy using a chip-mobile powered by breath. The propulsion pipe is a great way to teach kids about Boyle's law. The concept, volume and pressure are inversely related.
The simplicity of the propulsion pipe, the fact that it's completely transparent, allows the kids to see what happens when those plugs get closer and closer together. The volume gets smaller and smaller, the pressure builds, and then there's that satisfying pop.
The lesson, science experiments really can be found in the most ordinary of places, including your kitchen and even a bag of chips. I'm Carol Ann Riddell for Science and You.
Do butterflies bite?
No, butterflies do not bite. They don't have a mouth with which they can bite. Adult butterflies have a proboscis. It's basically a drinking straw at which they curl up when they're not using, and they unroll it to drink fluids. So they don't have any mandibles, and they can't give you a bite. They don't actually have any kind of mouth part at all, and they don't eat or drink as an adult.
What's the difference between a butterfly and a moth?
Some lepidopterists don't really see a distinction between them, but physical differences that you can look for are the antennae. The antennae on a butterfly are like straight sticks with a club at the end, and the antennae on a moth tend to be feathery, so they look like they have lots of little filaments coming off them. Also, butterflies go through 4 stages during their life cycle. They're an egg, a caterpillar, then they go into the chrysalis, and an adult. The butterflies that you see still in the case actually emerged from their chrysalis this morning. They're brand new butterflies today. You can see that the one hanging right here is actually a little kind of floppy. The wings are not rigid. That's because this one has literally just emerged and it has not finished drying its wings yet. Usually they'll hang on the empty chrysalid case for about 2 hours while they pump their blood, which is called hemolymph, out of their body into their wing veins, and they stretch out their wings and they dry and harden, and then they're able to fly and move around. It is a lot of fun. It's different every day.
Launch velocity, gravitational pull, entry angle. Believe it or not, you can learn a lot about launching a spacecraft by playing a round of mini golf. I'm Donna Hanover. Up your game and your spaceflight potential at the same time.
At the New York Hall of Science, they've even designed a 9-hole putt-putt golf course that has space as its theme. Program explainers like Martin Morius help players with the concepts.
The most important thing here is velocity, all right? So here on Earth, what keeps us down to the ground?
Gravity.
Gravity, right? So gravity pulls everything down. So same thing happens with the spaceship. When it goes up, gravity's gonna pull it right back down. So what we wanna do is we wanna basically shoot it fast enough so it exits our atmosphere. The trick here is you wanna get what we call zero gravity. And what zero gravity is basically just the idea of falling the entire time. So when you're out in space, you're actually constantly falling because the orbit, something's pulling you down, but you actually never touch the ground. So it's really weird. So that's why when you see all those videos of astronauts, they seem to be floating. They're actually constantly falling.
The golf course also has holes that demonstrate the challenges of dodging space junk, docking with another craft, using gravity whip to save fuel when changing flight paths, and making sure that during re-entry your spaceship gets into Earth orbit before trying to land to cut down on friction and heat. Sometimes parents step up to help with the space message.
Good job, Mom! You did it good!
Of course, not every adult does so well.
Almost. All right.
On the blast-off hole, I got the mission failure message several times. And once when I tried to shoot badly so we could record the mission failure audio, the ball accidentally bounced in the good direction. There is even space fun to be had without a putter. The point is,
I learned that you have to have enough velocity to get to space, and if you have too much, you'll get out of track, and if you have too less, the gravity will pull you down.
The rocket's constantly free falling down constantly. That's why the astronauts look like they're floating.
the final hole is called Splashdown, recalling America's pre-shuttle days when returning spacecraft landed in the ocean and were recovered by U.S. Navy aircraft carriers. Players get a hearty welcome when they finish.
Congratulations. So if you can't shoot birdie or par, if you're more the bogey or double bogey type, don't let it get you down. As these kids have found out, you've actually learned how to shoot something further than any fairway. I'm Donna Hanover for Science and You.
I'm Barry Mitchell at the Central Park Zoo with Dr. Tim Lee. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Barry. The oil companies are giving out gas-saving advice that they know you're not going to use. Did you know if you drove 55 instead of 65 on the freeway, you could get an extra 30 to 60 miles to the tank? Which is true, because you would actually get pushed forward by the honking noise.
How does one give up a career in science for the life of a comedian?
You get tired of reading and writing papers, and you decide to do something else. Science is straight logic, and comedy is twisted logic. So it wasn't that big of a difference for me. And the speaking part was pretty easy, because I used to give talks in front of smart people who try and pick apart my logic, and now I give talks in front of drunk people who try and pick apart my jokes. So, pretty natural transition.
And your field of expertise was?
Ecology and evolution. I did mostly mathematical biology. So,
explain what that is.
It's like population dynamics, trying to estimate population size. This is one of the things I helped work on with the seals.
Sea lions and oceanography figures into your past before you became a comedian. Tell us.
That's right. I was a biologist. I worked actually for the National Marine Fisheries Service at Scripps Institute of Oceanography. And we worked on, among other things, Xylophus californicus right here, California sea lion. And they're an amazing animal. They were endangered at one point, hunted to near extinction for their skins and oil. But they've made a comeback. They struggle with two major predators, which is the great white shark and then the killer whales.
So you weren't observing them in a tank like this, you were observing them in the wild?
Yeah, in the wild, out of the Channel Islands and anywhere along the California coast, yeah. My porta potty behavior determined entirely by this ratio.
How did you hit upon the idea of using PowerPoint as one of your props?
A lot of the times people don't understand the premise of the joke that we're trying to make, because science can be obscure for some people. So with PowerPoint, I can explain to them the principles, and then they can get the joke I want to make.
Young women also start off in a superficial stage, at which point they put a 90% weighting on social status, a minus 10% weighting on personality, 20% weighting on the car the guy drives.
Who is your audience?
My audience, I think the youngest, sort of fan would be maybe 14, 15, and then all the way up in the 70s, 80s. People who are a little bit nerdy, even if they don't look nerdy, they think nerdy, and they have an interest in science. I don't want my comedy to appeal to everyone because I think Bill Cosby said it best. I don't know what the secret to success is, but the secret to failure is trying to appeal to everyone. And if they like me, they like me, and if they don't, they don't. That's part of being an artist. I started off in the open mics in San Francisco. I started off at a laundromat that had an open mic, and which is actually the ideal place for an open mic because no one wants to listen to a comic when he just starts. The people doing their laundry have no choice but to listen. I finally moved up to the comedy club in San Francisco, which was the Punchline, and now I travel all over the country.
4.5 billion years ago, we saw the formation of the Earth from the explosion and collapse of a star that subsequently became our sun. 1 billion years after that, 3.5 billion years ago, we start to see the very first fossils in the fossil record, which are assumed to be some form of anaerobic bacteria. 3.4 billion years ago, Larry King hosts his first talk show.
It's been great talking to you.
It's been great talking to you, Barry.
And I can see that your act has the seal of approval. Our thanks to the Central Park Zoo and to Dr. Tim Lee. If people want to know about your upcoming shows, where do they reach you?
You can find me at youtubecomedian.com. It's got my schedule, and you can get in touch with me if you want to.
There you go. And I'm Barry Mitchell, and you're watching Science and You.
That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Grant Greenberg. See you next time on Science and You.